Welcome everyone to part 4 of our baseball presentation. In this one, we'll focus on players who started their careers in the 1970s and 1980s. Let's start off with perhaps the greatest third baseman in the history of the game, Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt is still 16th all-time in career home runs with 548. He was a 10-time Gold Glove winner at third base. You can see 1,595 career RBI, 12 All-Stars, a World Series title in 1980 with the Philadelphia Phillies. He was the MVP of that World Series, and he is a 3-time National League Most Valuable Player. The early to mid-'80s was dominated by Mike Schmidt. He led the National League in home runs 8 times. That's how amazing he was. And the Philadelphia Phillies, of course, have retired his jersey, number 20. Mike Schmidt was a winner. Mike Schmidt was a tough, gritty guy who got the job done. And the Philadelphia fans loved him for it. Philadelphia is known as a tough city to play in any sport. The fans are tough on their athletes, but Mike Schmidt is loved to this day. Dave Winfield, interesting guy. Dave Winfield is a big guy, tall, broad-shouldered, big guy, and one of the great athletes this country has ever seen. He played baseball and basketball at the University of Minnesota and starred in both sports there. And after college, he was drafted by 4 teams in 3 different sports. So the San Diego Padres drafted him as a pitcher, although he played outfield in the major leagues. He had a rocket for an arm. The Atlanta Hawks in the NBA and the Utah Stars in the ABA drafted him to play professional basketball. And even though he had not played football in college, the Minnesota Vikings of the NFL drafted him to play football. And so he had to make a choice. I mean, talk about a good problem to have, I guess, but he is the only athlete ever drafted by 4 different leagues. And that talk about crazy, but he chose baseball, and that was a good choice. A career 283 hitter, over 3,100 career hits and 465 home runs, over 1,800 career RBI. He made it to 12 straight All-Star games, a 7-time Gold Glove winner in the outfield, and he helped the Blue Jays win the first of their back-to-back World Series. They won in 1992, and he was a star on that team. He played for the Padres. He played for the Yankees. He was a big-time free agent. You can see in 1981 he became the game's highest-paid player, a 10-year, $23 million contract with the Yankees. He could hit the ball a mile. Like I said, he had a cannon for an arm in the outfield. He was fast for a big guy. He could do everything on a baseball field, and he was a good guy to have on your team, to say the least. Speaking of competitors, nobody was more competitive than George Brett. George Brett is the legendary, mostly third baseman, played a little bit of first, for the Kansas City Royals. Played his entire career with the Royals. He hit .305 for his career and 3,154 career hits, which is second most by a third baseman in Major League history. He had plenty of pop in his bat, over 300 career home runs, and drove in almost 1,600 runs during his playing career. He's one of only 4 Major League players in history to accumulate 3,000 hits, 300 home runs, and a .300 batting average, and the others are Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and Stan Musial. That's a pretty elite company to have those statistics. He helped the Royals win a World Series in 1985. He was the American League MVP in 1980 and a 3-time batting champion. in 3 different decades. In fact, he's the only player in Major League history to win a batting title in 3 different decades. George Brett was a clutch player, a tough-nosed player, and a player anybody would want on their team. A player anyone would want on their team as well is Paul Molitor. Paul Molitor was versatile. He played different positions. He was a true professional. He went about his business. He was quiet. He never made a big fuss about things. He didn't want to be in the media. He just went out and played baseball, and he was amazing. You can see he batted .306. He's 10th all time in career hits. He was quick, fast on the base paths, over 500 stolen bases, and he was on the Blue Jays team in 1993 to help them win their second World Championship in a row. He was the MVP of that World Series in 1993 as well. He played most of his career with the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Brewers retired his jersey, but then he went to the Blue Jays at the end of his career and helped them win a world title. You can see he's one of only 4 major league players in history with at least 3,000 hits, a 300 lifetime average, and 500 stolen bases. And the other 3 are Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, and Eddie Collins. So he's the only player in modern Major League history with all those statistics. He's just incredible. And first player in World Series history in that 1993 series when he won the MVP to have at least 2 homers, 2 doubles, and 2 triples in one series. Paul Molitor got the job done on the baseball field. And like I said, a true professional in the game. Rickey Henderson is the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of baseball. The Man of Steel, they called him, because he has the major league record all time for most stolen bases, 1,406. He also has the major league record for most runs scored, 2,295, and the major league record for most career leadoff home runs, which means as a leadoff hitter, you either come up in the top of the first or the bottom of the first inning, depending on if you're the home team or the road team. And his first at bat of a game, 81 times he hit a home run. You can see he had almost 300 homers for his career, over 3,000 hits, 10 All-Stars, 2 World Series championships. He was the champion in 1989 with the Oakland A's, and in 1993, a teammate with Paul Molitor on that Blue Jays team. He won a Gold Glove. He was the American League MVP in 1990, and he could do everything on a baseball field. He was lightning fast. He disrupted the game for opposing pitchers and opposing defenses. If he got on to start a game, or if he got on any time in a game, there was always a danger of him being on third base before you know it. He'd steal second, steal third, and that just changes a game. So you can see not only was he a great base stealer and had a ton of career hits and things, but you can see he's second all time in walks as well. And he's the only player in American League history to steal 100 bases in a season, which he did 3 times. Now, Rickey Henderson was a tremendous athlete. Like Dave Winfield, he chose baseball, but he could have probably played, he certainly could have played college football and potentially professional football. He was an All-American running back in high school, and he turned down a bunch of football scholarship offers to play baseball. He always kept himself in immaculate shape physically. He played into his 40s, and Rickey Henderson was a guy you would definitely want on your team. He played for the A's, like I said. He played for the Blue Jays. He played for the Yankees. He played for numerous teams, and he was a star everywhere he went. One of the most loved athletes in his city of all time is Cal Ripken Jr. One of the great shortstops of all time is Cal Ripken Jr. The Iron Man. Over 3,000 hits, 431 home runs, almost 1,700 RBI, 19 All-Star selections in a row. He won a World Series championship as a young guy with the Baltimore Orioles. He was from the Baltimore area. He played his entire career with the Baltimore Orioles, and the Orioles fans idolize him. You can see a two-time Gold Glove winner, two-time American League MVP. His number 8 jersey has been retired by the Orioles, and he's known as the Iron Man because he has the record of 2,632 consecutive games played. He broke Lou Gehrig's streak, and he did that in 1995. At 6'4" and 225 pounds, he was much bigger than most shortstops had ever been. He revolutionized the way the shortstop position was and is played. Since Cal Ripken Jr., we've seen a lot more shortstops that are bigger framed, whereas traditionally they were smaller framed. But you can see his records, not only consecutive games played, consecutive innings played, but most home runs by a shortstop, just exclusively a shortstop, most American League All-Star selections, most All-Star appearances at shortstop, and he of course holds the Orioles franchise records in numerous categories. Cal Ripken Jr. is truly one of the all-time legends. Ryne Sandberg, one of the great second basemen of all time, born and raised in Spokane, Washington, my hometown. Sandberg, you can see almost 2,400 career hits, 282 home runs, over 1,000 career RBI, 10 All-Star selections, 9 Gold Gloves in a row. He was the 1984 NL MVP. And his fielding percentage of .989 is a major league record for second baseman, which means out of every 1,000 chances he had to field a ball, to throw a ball, to catch a ball, he successfully did it 989 out of 1,000 times. So amazing. But very sure-handed, great athlete himself. He was a high school All-American quarterback in Spokane in the late 70s, and he signed a letter of intent to play football at Washington State University, but then he got drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies and chose baseball over football. So, and now obviously it turned out to be a good move. His high school, North Central High School, their baseball field is named Ryne Sandberg Field. I played baseball in high school at Shadle Park, and Shadle Park High School and North Central are rivals, and so I played plenty of games over at Ryne Sandberg Field. But he's a legend in Spokane and really a legend in Major League Baseball. Perhaps in the top handful of greatest hitters, pure hitters of all time, is Tony Gwynn. Mr. Padre, they call him. His .338 career batting average is the highest among players whose careers began after World War II. His hand-eye coordination was superior. He is also called Captain Video because he really studied opposing pitchers. He watched a lot of videotape of opposing pitchers and trying to figure out their tendencies and their arm slots for certain pitches they would throw. And he would look for any little thing he could to gain an advantage. And he was a master at it. You can see over 3,100 career hits. He was not a big power hitter, but had enough pop to keep you honest. Over 1,100 RBI. 8-time National League batting champ, which is tied for second most in Major League history. Never hit below 309 in any full season. That is just unbelievable. 15 All-Star selections and a 5-time Gold Glove Award winner. He was very good in the outfield. He has his jersey retired by the Padres. And as Tony Gwynn got a little older, he put on a few pounds, and so you wouldn't think it to look at him, especially during his later playing days, but he was a tremendous athlete. He played college baseball and college basketball for San Diego State and was a heck of a basketball player. So Tony Gwynn As far as I'm concerned, and having watched him play plenty, uh, if I could model my hitting after one player that I've seen uh, play in my lifetime, it would probably be Tony Gwynn. Now we're into the 1980s here, and this is an interesting time in baseball. The players that started in the 80s, because a lot of the players that started in the 80s, by the very late 80s and into the 1990s, when they were still playing, some of these guys got into performance enhancing drugs, got into steroids. And although many of them would deny it, uh, other people came out and said they had done those things, and including trainers and teammates and so forth, to implicate them. And because of that, some of these all-time great players are still not in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens is one of them, the Rocket. Roger Clemens was a dominating pitcher, as dominating as anybody of his era. You can see his career record, 354 and 184. Phenomenal. 3.12 ERA. He's third all time in career strikeouts with 4,672. Won 2 World Series titles with the Yankees in 1999 and 2000. And a 7-time Cy Young Award winner, which is most in history. And he did that with, as you can see, 4 different teams. He won 3 with the Red Sox. That's who he started his career with. 2 with the Blue Jays, 1 with the Yankees, and 1 with the Astros. He's a big Texas farm boy, cut out of the mold of Nolan Ryan, and he kind of was Nolan Ryan Part 2. Regularly pitched, 7, 8, 9 innings every time he started. He had an overpowering fastball, developed a great split finger fastball. Nolan Ryan, like we said, he was kind of the original fireballer of this era, if you will, even though he was a little before this time. But Roger Clemens picked up where Nolan Ryan left off. He was even the American League MVP, Clemens was, in 1986. Twice the American League Pitchers Triple Crown winner, both times with the Blue Jays. And 7 times he led the league in ERA, once in the National League, 6 times in the American League. Led the American League 5 times in strikeouts, 4 times in wins. He'd been an All-American at the University of Texas and helped Texas win the 1983 College World Series. So his pedigree is as great as just about any pitcher in history. His statistics are up there with anybody. But as he kept getting older, his play didn't really diminish very much, and people started to suspect that something was going on. And then his former trainer came out and accused him of using PEDs. Clemens has always denied it, but Hall of Fame voters still have not voted him in. And as time has gone on, some people keep thinking that these steroid era guys may get in, but they haven't yet. And Clemens is at the top of the list who has not gotten in. So he definitely is statistically deserving of a Hall of Fame spot, but we'll see what happens. Here's another guy. During that era, Barry Bonds, one of the great pure baseball players that the game has ever seen. He grew up around the game. His dad was a Major League Baseball player. Barry Bonds' godfather is Willie Mays. Barry Bonds grew up in Major League clubhouses. He grew up taking batting practice or taking fly balls during batting practice as a kid while his dad was playing. And he always grew up around baseball. He came up with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He showed right away he could hit for average, he could hit for power. He was a good outfielder. He was fast, he could steal bases. He was just a pure talent on the baseball field. As he got older, his skills continued to improve, and he kept hitting home runs and a lot of doubles and a lot of, and just made great plays in the outfield. He was just an awesome player. And his statistics speak for themselves. Well, let's look at the statistics real quick, and then we can talk about uh, what happened at the end of his career. You can see he is the all-time leader in career home runs. He passed up Hank Aaron for the most career home runs. He has 762, 2,935 hits, 1,996 career RBI, which is sixth all time. He's third all time in runs scored with 2,227, 14 All Stars, 8-time Gold Glove winner, 7-time National League MVP, which is the most MVPs of all time. And he won some of those with the Pirates and some of those with the San Francisco Giants. You can see his major league records. Of course, home runs in a season. He was walked more than anybody. He was intentionally walked more than anybody. Pitchers just didn't want to face him. They just didn't even want to give him a chance to swing the bat oftentimes. Only person to have at least 500 home runs and 500 stolen bases. Most consecutive years with 30 plus home runs. 13 years in a row from 1992 to 2004. You can see his single season record, slugging percentage in a season, on base percentage in a season, walks in a season, intentional walks in a single season. In fact, this is incredible. First player in Major League history with more times on base, 376, than official at bats, 373 in a season. He did that in 2004 with the Giants. If you get up and you walk, that is not considered an official at bat. An official at bat is either a base hit, an out, the other team commits an error, but it's not a walk. So he was on base more times than he officially came to bat in 2004. It's because he was walked so much. So what happened? What's going on with Barry Bonds, and why is he not in the Hall of Fame? His statistics say that he should be. Well, you can see from the pictures. There he is as a young man on the left with the Pirates, and there he is as he got older with the Giants. Now, of course, as guys get older, they usually put on a few pounds, and you fill out in your frame. But Barry Bonds was doing things as an older player that no older player had ever done. Generally, as you get older, your hand-eye coordination slows down a little bit, and in baseball, all it takes is for your hand-eye coordination to slow down just a fraction, and that can completely change the kind of player you are. If you're now off a pitch by a tenth of a second or a fraction of an inch, that's the difference between a home run and a swing and a miss or a pop out. And so Barry Bonds, though, as he got older, kept getting better, and pitchers wouldn't pitch to him because when they did, he might come up to bat 4 times in a game. He might see one good pitch the entire game, and he'd hit it over the fence for a home run. And it was just incredible. And obviously, then you can see how his frame not only filled out, but he started looking like Superman as far as his arms and things like that. When his head size grew uh, toward the later part of his career, his shoe size grew. Those are not things that normally happen, but those are indications of steroid use. And so Bonds, of course, denied it, but everybody kind of saw what was happening, and because of that, he is not in the Hall of Fame. But and that's the sad part. People like Barry Bonds, people like Roger Clemens, they would be in the Hall of Fame without the PEDs. If they had, even if they had declined at the end of their career, like everyone else does, their statistics alone would have gotten them into the Hall of Fame. But their legacies are tarnished because of the steroid use. But no doubt about it, one of the great players ever. Now, a guy who, by all indications, certainly did not use steroids is Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux is known as Mad Dog, or I always like to call him the Professor. If you saw this guy walking down the street, you would think he was a nerdy accountant, or he might as well have a pocket protector with some pens sticking out of it, and he often wore glasses, at least in the first part of his career on the mound. And you would think he was the professor, and so he didn't look like a professional baseball player, and yet one of the great pitchers ever. He's 8th all time in wins. His ERA just above 3 for his career, over 3,300 career strikeouts. He helped the Braves win a World Series in 1995. He has a major league record 18 Gold Gloves. He fielded his position as well as anyone ever has. He won 4 straight National League Cy Young awards, and he's the first pitcher in Major League history to win 4 straight Cy Young awards. The only pitcher in Major League history to win at least 15 games for 17 straight years. He stayed healthy, he was consistent, and he was just amazing. He did not have overpowering stuff. And you would think a guy with over 3,000 strikeouts and that low of ERA, you'd think he'd have a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He did not. Greg Maddux was the ultimate pitcher. He hit the corners. He changed speeds. His ball had tremendous movement on it. His ball to right-handers, his two-seam fastball would start off 6 inches off the outside corner, and hitters would give up on it, and the ball would tail back over the outside corner for a strike. He was unbelievable to watch. He outpitched people is simply what he did. He didn't overpower them. He just outsmarted them and outpitched them. You can see he's one of only 10 pitchers in history with 300 plus wins and 3,000 plus strikeouts. And he's the only pitcher with 300 plus wins, 3,000 plus strikeouts, and fewer than 1,000 walks. His control was amazing. Greg Maddux was a pleasure to watch. You just kind of got done watching him after a game. You just scratched your head, wondering how he did what he did, because he was not imposing, wasn't this huge big guy, and didn't have overpowering stuff, but he won games. He was amazing. The Cubs and the Braves retired his jersey. He played for both teams, and he was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2004. One of the all-time legends. Now, Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire, like Bonds, like Clemens, would probably be in the Hall of Fame based on his statistics, except that he used steroids. He'd played college baseball at USC, was a star there, and then was on the 1984 USA Olympic team, and never hit for a big average, but he was a modern-day Paul Bunyan. He hit home runs like crazy. He hit them in bunches. He was intimidating at the plate for any pitcher. You can see he had 583 career homers, which is 11th all time, and over 1,400 RBI. 12 All-Star games, 2 World Series titles, one as a player with the A's in 1989, and one as a coach with the Cardinals in 2011. But as a player, he won one with that powerful 1989 Oakland team. He was a good first baseman, had a good glove. He won a Gold Glove in 1990. And you can see he was 2-time AL home run champ and 2-time NL home run champ. Played for the A's and for the Cardinals. In 1987, he was the AL Rookie of the Year, and he set a then record with 49 home runs as a rookie. And he just took the league by storm. He was never just a skinny little guy, as you can see up in the upper left, as a young guy for the A's. He wasn't a skinny guy. He's a big guy. He's tall and big, but after his Oakland A's playing career, or at least at the end of it, he went to the Cardinals, and his frame just went to another level. He certainly was on steroids. It was pretty obvious. And by the late 1990s, he looked like a statue carved out of granite. His arms were as big as tree trunks, and he didn't look normal. He didn't look human. He still has the all-time record for the best ratio, I should say, for home runs per at-bats in history, even better than Babe Ruth. Mark McGwire averaged 1 homer for every 10.6 times he came to the plate. He was, like I said, intimidating and scary for pitchers to face. In 1998, he hit 70 home runs, breaking Roger Maris's single season home run record. So Babe Ruth had hit 60 home runs in a season. Roger Maris in 1961 hit 61 home runs. And then in 1998, Mark McGwire hit 70. Now, Barry Bonds hit 73 in 2001, just a few years after McGwire breaking, so he broke that record. But McGwire, unlike Clemens, unlike Bonds, actually admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs for a lot of his career. And for that reason, he is not in the Hall of Fame. Will he get in someday? Who knows? But for right now, he is not. Talk about intimidation. Randy Johnson. Unbelievable. Randy Johnson, the big unit, 6'10". Just how would you like to face this guy? Started out his career playing for the Montreal Expos. He then went to the Seattle Mariners, where I used to go over and watch him play. And then he went to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he ended up pitching for a few teams in his career. But he was amazing. He was wild at first as a young pitcher. The ball would, sometimes go over the plate and sometimes go, 3 feet above the catcher. Might go behind a hitter. And once he got his control figured out, he became dominant. An overpowering fastball, 100 miles an hour. He also had a great slider, and I just can't imagine trying to hit off him. You can see his career ERA, 3.29, which is awesome, especially for a power pitcher. 303 career wins. He is second all-time in strikeouts and first among left-handers in strikeouts for a career with 4,875. He helped the Diamondbacks win that 2001 World Series, that dramatic World Series against the Yankees, and he was the World Series MVP that year. His 5 Cy Young Awards are second most all-time, next only to Roger Clemens. He won one of them with the Mariners in 1995, and then 4 in a row with the Diamondbacks from 1999 to 2002. So he matched Greg Maddux 4 in a row, and that's just almost, it's only been done twice, and just incredible. In his 2002 season with the Diamondbacks, he won the National League Pitchers Triple Crown. He pitched a no-hitter and a perfect game, and he is first all-time for starting pitchers in strikeouts per 9 innings. He averaged 10.67 strikeouts for every 9 innings he pitched. So Randy Johnson, nobody would like to face him, especially left-handers were terrified to face him. And at 6'10", by the time he released the ball, it looked like he was just standing right next to you. The pitcher's mound, or the pitcher's rubber, is 60 feet 6 inches from home plate, and with his stride, and by the time he released the baseball, he was a lot closer than 60 feet 6 inches. So, boy, he was fun to watch, though, especially if he was on a team that you liked and rooted for. The kid, Ken Griffey Jr. Griffey, for my money, of all the players I have seen play live, all the players I've seen in person, Ken Griffey Jr. is probably the greatest, most gifted all-around player I've ever seen. He was amazing. He was the first overall pick by the Mariners in the 1987 draft. Griffey was the son of Ken Griffey Sr., who had been an excellent Major League Baseball player, had been a World Series champion with the Cincinnati Reds. Griffey Sr. was played for a few different teams in the major leagues, and Ken Griffey Jr., of course, like Barry Bonds, had grown up on a Major League Baseball field. He'd grown up in the clubhouses and during batting practice, and when his dad was playing, and so Griffey was destined to be a star in the major leagues, and he became just that. He Went from being drafted in 1987 as a 16-year-old kid to debuting with the Mariners at the age of 19, and he stuck. He was a powerful left-handed hitter, had the perfect swing. It was a thing of beauty. He could hit for average, even though his 284 career average is not eye-popping. He could hit for well over 300. Um, he had 2,781 career hits, and his 630 career homers are seventh all time. 1,836 career RBI. He was a perennial all-star, especially during his prime, and 10 straight Gold Gloves in the outfield. The whole decade of the 90s, he really dominated uh, the game of baseball. In 1997, he was the American League MVP. He led the American League in home runs 4 times, and including tying a major league record with a home run in 8 consecutive games uh, at one stretch. He was the first #1 overall pick in the Major League Draft to enter the Hall of Fame, which he did in 2016. And like I said, I was lucky enough growing up in Spokane. We used to get all the Mariners games on TV, and then we'd occasionally go over and watch the Mariners play. And he was just a treasure. He was a joy to watch, making unbelievable catches in the outfield, flying around the bases, hitting home runs, throwing guys out at home plate. Had a cannon for an arm. He was fast, and the thing was, especially in his early part of his career, he would do things like you can see on the bottom picture there. He would go crashing into walls after the ball, make incredible catches, robbing home runs, diving all over the field. But part of the problem was, especially in Seattle, was that old AstroTurf that had no give to it. And so he's throwing his body around all over the ground, into fences, and he would get hurt. He would injure himself. He had broken wrists. He had, you name it, and he missed quite a bit of time throughout his career due to injury. He missed some time in Seattle, and then he went to Cincinnati. Went to the Reds, where his dad had played, where he had grown up, and he was just never the same as a Cincinnati Red as he was as a Mariner. Even though he had sometimes been injured as a Mariner, with Cincinnati, it seemed like he was injured more often, and it just wasn't the same. Of course, I'm a Mariner fan, so it's never the same to watch your favorite player play for somebody else. But if he had not been injured in his career so often, his home run total, his RBI total, his career hits would be much higher. And who knows where he'd be on the all-time home run list if he had not been injured, but quite a bit. But while he was healthy, he was as good or better than anyone else in the major leagues. He was just a treat to watch, and still goes down as one of my all-time favorite players. Slammin' Sammy Sosa from the Dominican Republic. He was fun to watch too, and boy, did he give Cubs fans, uh, a thrill. He was from the Dominican Republic. He is from the Dominican Republic, and started out playing for the White Sox. A little skinny kid, and in the '90s, and then goes across town to the Cubs, and that's where his career took off. You can see over 2,400 career hits, 609 home runs, ninth all time. He is the all-time home run leader among foreign-born major league players. And he's the only player in Major League history to have hit 60-plus home runs in a single season 3 times. And the crazy part is that in none of those seasons, 98, 99, or 2001, did he lead the league in home runs. Each of those years he had over 60 homers, but somebody else hit more. And it was Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds who always got the best of him. But over 1,600 career RBI. He was the National League MVP in 1998. But he is a steroid guy, and and everybody could see it. We could see it as we were watching him. He, like I said, went from this little skinny guy for the White Sox, and when he goes to the Cubs, he beefed up and bulked up in a way that it was not natural. And he was hitting home runs like crazy. Now, the Cubs fans loved it, and baseball fans loved it. We kind of turned a blind eye in the late 90s, especially, and early 2000s to all the steroids. But he was, he ran out to his position and in right field and ran back to the dugout after innings and always had a smile on his face. And he was number one for Cubs fans, and he owned the city of Chicago uh, in the the early, especially the very late 90s uh, and the early 2000s. So he was fun to watch, no doubt about it. But not only did he use PEDs, but he also was caught corking bats. And when you cork a bat, the old way to do it is to you drill a little hole in the top of the wood bat, and you stuff. In the old days, it was cork, and in modern times, guys have used other things like they'll crush up super balls, those bouncy super balls, and they stuff them down into the bat, and then you cover over the top of the bat and conceal it and make it look like there was nothing drilled in. And if you have something in the middle of the bat like that, that can, on contact with the ball, make the ball just shoot off the bat. So that's what Sosa was doing, and he got caught because one of the games he swung, made contact with the ball, but shattered his bat, uh, and the the cork or the thing he was corking his bat with went all over the field. So he got caught red-handed. So anyway, but Sammy Sosa was a joy to watch play. But he's not in the Hall of Fame because of the performance-enhancing drugs, and who knows if he'll ever get into the Hall of Fame. But this was the steroid era. Guys were using steroids. Baseball just kind of looked the other way. Uh, as fans, I think some people realized it, and other people just kind of were oblivious, like, oh yeah, guys are just getting huge. Their arms are as big as my legs now. Oh yeah, whatever, that's normal. And home runs were flying out of the park at record rates. But baseball fans loved it. They loved the home run, and baseball loved it. Now keep in mind, this time in the late 90s, this is just after, in 1994, there was no World Series. Uh, there was a strike. The players went on strike the second half of the baseball season, and there was no World Series. And so uh, that drove a lot of fans away from the game. And baseball needed something to bring the fans back, and the home run was just the thing. And so by the late 90s, when guys are hitting bombs all over the place and they're using steroids to hit them at record rates, the baseball people, the commissioner and the people at the top, uh, they thought it was great, and a lot of the fans thought it was awesome too. So and that also just tells you how much more impressive it was for pitchers like Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson, pitchers who were clean, to do what they did during this era of home run after home run, for guys to be amazing on the mound and put up amazing statistics that some of them did. That's a testament to how great they truly were. So anyway, but that's Sammy Sosa.